Brooks. And in the cover story this afternoon, a sort of war of words has erupted between the security minister and human rights lobby group Jamaicans for Justice. It was triggered this morning when on this station, the national security minister, the deputy prime minister, accused Jamaicans for Justice of, quote, living off blood money. He was reacting to some civil society organizations, CSOs, who he says consistently undermine the work of the police force for financial gain. Here's a report from Mahiri Stewart.
Dr. Chang came out swinging against CSOs, including religious groups and Jamaicans for Justice, in his first media interview since resuming official duties following a period of illness. Speaking with George Davis on Nationwide this morning on Monday, the minister argued that the consistent broadside against the police force from the groups was selfish and unfair. A strident Dr. Chang says the criticism is based solely in whether or not police personnel were using body-worn cameras during incidents of fatal shootings.
There was what I consider a broadside, an unjust, selfish, and cruel broadside against police officers because they weren't using cameras.
By whom?
It was designed by various people in the community. There were the Jamaican for Justice, others who claim their right to life, some of the pastors who claim they know more about policing than police, and it was given a highlight in some section of the media.
According to Dr. Chang, the civil society groups are criticizing the police for their own benefit.
When the police apprehend the murderers, if they shoot, if one gets shot, the police are murderer. That kind of discussion must be discontinued. I have to raise it because it's a young Jamaican right, committed to justice and right, whose commitment to fair play is being questioned. And they will have the strength and the training to withstand it when their families start being alluded to in public spaces. It becomes a problem. The people in Jamaica for Justice and other areas must stop this. They are living off blood money.
Dr. Chang's comments come against an ongoing debate in sections of the society about the reduction in murders achieved in 2025 versus the number of police fatal killings for the period. He says the narratives being pushed by some CSOs suggest that the security forces are wantonly killing members of the public. The minister argues, however, that there is no evidence to suggest that police in this era are abusing their power.
In fact, evidence is contrary. When you plot the number of fatal shootings last year and the reduction in murder, there is a mathematical formula. So this, it is perfectly aligned, which on a statistical basis, it means police are killing murderers. So murder goes down. But yet you come out with no evidence because the prosecution rate, the fact income whose investigations are not in clear. They are budgeted for, supported by the government. They're independent, good investigators. They have less than a 2% success rate. So there's no evidence to suggest that policemen in this era, and I emphasize that, now they can discuss well, is going out there and wantonly shooting people.
Minister Chang says the narrative is hurting young police personnel and undermining their confidence in doing their job.
And when you make that kind of broadside as if to suggest that the police are the murderers, which is what they're doing, you undermine their confidence, although the police officers are, leadership is exercising their leadership. When a young man goes on the road and he knows that there's a gang over there, he will avoid it for a while. It is a natural emotional toning down because we take no consideration that these are young Jamaicans committed to protect and serve, yet they have families. When you get this kind of broadside and suggest that they are doing something immoral and corrupt, it hurts. And I think we have to make direct appeal to desist from this kind of activity.
Mahiri Stewart for Nationwide News.
Thank you, Mahiri. Now, hours later, Jamaicans for Justice responded in a statement, and I will read for you in relevant part what they had to say. The human rights lobby group says Jamaicans for Justice, JFJ, has taken note of comments made by Dr. Horace Chang, the Minister of National Security and Peace, and Deputy Prime Minister, Nationwide News Network. We find the framing of our work as living off blood money both unfortunate, untrue, and inflammatory. Such language does little, JFJ says, to advance constructive dialogue on public safety and accountability. It says, in light of the defamatory nature of the blood money accusation and its potential consequences, JFJ is currently seeking legal advice on the matter and any possible actions that may be warranted. JFJ says our public releases and positions are grounded in verifiable data drawn directly from official sources, including INDICOM, the Ministry of National Security, the Jamaica Constabulary Force, and court records, as well as information provided by complainants. We make no assertions, JFJ says, beyond what these authoritative sources and processes indicate. In our critique, the human rights group says we do not broad brush police killings as extrajudicial. Rather, we highlight documented patterns, recurring complaints, and specific incidents such as the fatal shootings of Jamar Farquharson, Romario Sterling, and Teron Hewitt that warrant greater security. JFJ says it will not be slandered. It will not be slandered, and it has publicly called for adequate compensation and improved working conditions for police officers so they're not forced to litigate for fair wages and better treatment. It says the suggestions that they do not support the police is therefore unfounded. It says a broadside of this nature by the minister unnecessarily pits officers against a civil society organization which is dedicated to shared goals of safety and justice. JFJ says it welcomes Dr. Chang's return to active duties following his recovery and wish him continued good health and success in his responsibilities. However, as Deputy Prime Minister and the Minister of National Security, JFJ says a great deal is expected of Dr. Chang in terms of leadership, measured discourse, and fostering an environment where accountability and security reinforce each other and do not clash. Joining us now to react, we have political commentator Jermaine Barrett and political commentator Kevin O'Brien Chan. Gentlemen, good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining me.
Hi, good afternoon. Thanks for having me. Good afternoon.
All right, Jermaine Barrett, let me start with you. Did the security minister cross a line?
I think his comments were unfortunate, inflammatory. I think there are concerns with respect to how it is that the public is engaging with the issue, and I don't know that the comment does anything to attract a conscientious example of the issue. That much I will say. I think it's necessary that both sides of this debate, this conversation, tone down and be a lot more rational and focus on the shared goal of reducing crime and bringing Jamaica to a state of lawfulness and peace.
Kevin O'Brien Chang, is it time to tone down the rhetoric?
I can tell you something. 95% of Jamaicans are with Dr. Chang. What is the greatest human right? These are human rights groups, right?
The right to life, they say, is the greatest.
The right to life, the right to stay alive. What's the number one job of a government?
Security, they would say.
Safe.
Yes.
Keep its people safe. All right? And for 20, 30 years, Jamaica had the highest murder rate in the world. By far. It was embarrassing. We were up at 60, the next people were like at 40 sometimes. And for over consistently, other countries would have high murder rates and then drop out, We were up there in the top 5 for like 30 years straight. Not only embarrassing, but horrific. How could a society allow such thousands of people to be killed every year and people see business as normal? Finally, we got a prime minister with the balls to attack the gangs, which were protected by both sides of them. They can't tell me any different. PNP and JLP protected their henchmen for elections. Finally, the Prime Minister came, said, no, we are going to give the police freedom to take on the gangs, no matter who they're connected with. Murders have dropped from the 1,600 a few years ago. It was at under 700 last year.
But Kevin, hold on, Kevin. Hold on, Kevin. Let me just be clear on something. Let me just be clear on something.
They don't want any good
hold on, Kevin. Calling for accountability from the police. Surely you're not saying that necessarily translates into being anti-police.
What is Indicom doing? Indicom is there to ensure accountability from the police.
But that doesn't mean other voices can't be elevated Indicom, in that quest.
The 2% where Indicom finds a problem, let the human rights people deal with them, because the police are not perfect. Let's get this straight. No organization in the world is perfect.
But I don't know that Jamaicans for Justice is requiring perfection, are they, Kevin?
Well, then let them deal with the ones Indicom has a problem with. Don't attack every police killing. And this good Jamaican for justice, they mean no good for the country. Now, remember that when the man.
No, but hold on, Kevin. Hold on. No, Kevin, just a second, Kevin. Just a second, Kevin.
That cut the 5 throats
Kevin.
of the picnic and the mother.
Kevin.
What did they say? What about rehabilitation?
Kevin.
Yes.
Jamaicans for Justice has existed since 1999.
Mm-hmm.
And their mandate has always been to hold the security forces, the state, for abuses of human rights. And I'm saying to you, hold on. And I'm saying to you, and I need you to accept this. Surely you're not saying that to ask for accountability from the security forces means that one is anti-police. That is not your position, right?
No.
All right, I'll open a break. Let me take the break. Let me take the break and come back with more. Jermaine Barrett, Kevin O'Brien, hold it. Human rights lobby groups. And this morning, the National Security Minister, the Deputy Prime Minister, came out swinging. He has accused human rights lobby groups. He named Jamaicans for Justice in particular of living off blood money. Kevin O'Brien Chang says the Security Minister is quite right, and he speaks on behalf of the majority of Jamaicans. Jermaine Barrett says the comment may have been too inflammatory and it may have unnecessarily crossed a line. Jermaine Barrett, but is Kevin right, though, that there is a certain posturing to civil society advocacy that Jamaicans may now be seeing as anti-police and that they should perhaps change that approach?
There's merit in that position. I think Kevin is right. That the vast majority of Jamaicans view civil society as being anti the fight against crime and defenders of criminality. I don't share that view. I don't think that view is reflected in the evidence, but that is likely to be the case. The fact, though, is that civil society needs to communicate a lot clearer to the Jamaicans at large, their core mandate, and that they also need to defend the police when it is that the police are under attack, defend citizens when the citizens are under attack, and not be seen as they constantly are, as being defenders of people with, who come into a conflict with the law, quite often. But I don't agree with Kevin at the same time that this matter has to do with, well, if it is that you're holding accountable and demanding accountability from the police officers and the JCF, that you are necessarily against the downward spiral in crime and homicides. I don't think that makes sense at all.
Kevin, is part of the problem the advocacy? How can JFJ change that perception then? The perception you hold that they're anti-police and they don't mean Jamaica any good?
Once upon a time, the police were very brutal. No question about that. Remember, for years, police have been hated in Jamaica, Ever since 1867, they were formed. But Indicom has come along. Indicom's job is to make sure that they examine every police killing, that they're not killing innocent people. Jamaican for Justice, they're trying to do a job which is being done better by somebody else. What they should be doing is looking at the bad eggs. Yes, you have innocent people being killed or questionable. Focus on those. And also get justice for the victims. Does anybody remember Tanya Francis? Does that name ring a bell?
Yes.
2018, this poor little 14-year-old girl was murdered, raped, and her body was burnt in Arnett Gardens. Right? Never have we heard anything about anybody being brought to justice. That is what a Jamaican for Justice should be. Get justice for people like Tanya Francis.
But
right?
Kevin, they do work on behalf of people.
Yeah, but hold on. When they make statements, that man that cut that throat of the mother and children, he carried on a couple years ago. 5 of them killed. What was the Jamaican for Justice argument? What about rehabilitation for this poor young man? Now you tell me, how a group like that needs any good for the country? Or people are going to assume they want good for the country? Are they here to protect innocent people, to try to get justice for those who are not getting justice? No, that is supposed to be their job. Not to come and broadbush and train the police who have brought murders down by 50%. That is the impression of the public, and they make statements that the public cannot but conclude. They don't care about innocent Jamaicans. They want to protect their young babies and to get their funding. How can you blame Jamaicans for not concluding that based on the statements they make?
Just to again clarify, Jamaicans for Justice is considering that kind of posturing defamatory. They say it's untrue and that their funding does not differ from the funding received. Let me just finish this point. Let me just finish this point. The funding that the government, the state, receives from international donor organizations. Yes, Kevin.
What I'm saying is based on their statements and posturing, how can the public not conclude that they do not value innocent Jamaican lives and are just want to attack the police to get funding? I'm not saying it is so, but based on their statements, how can we conclude differently? When the police are killed, a soldier was killed last week. Did we hear Jamaican for Justice say this poor man putting his life on the line to keep Jamaicans safe? We feel for him? No, you never hear that from Jamaican for Justice. You don't hear them having a sympathy with the security forces who put their lives on the line to keep people safe.
But I can say, Kevin,
Dr. Blake has said about the body cameras, it is a very complex issue. We cannot drop them, so it requires a huge technological back end to keep it figuring out that. He has said repeatedly, and they keep coming with this soundbite thing to catch people and to catch people abroad. The police are brutal.
Okay, let me just say, Jamaicans for Justice has in the past condemned the killing of police officers. I think part of the problem is perhaps the media has not reported it, but I certainly have seen those statements. So let me ask you, Jermaine, does JFJ then need to start? You think it could help if they start being equally vocal, as Kevin is suggesting, when members of the security forces come under attack? Because they do it. That
would help, Ricardo. But I think importantly as well, while we celebrate the new JCF, the JCF that respects human rights, the JCF that is demonstrating greater degrees of professionalism, the JCF that is holding itself accountable for the best practices in policing, we also have to credit civil society for having advocated and agitated to the extent that we are getting the kinds of services that we're getting from the JCF. No, but it's not. I think it is. I think it is problematic, hugely problematic, when people like my colleague commentator here condemn civil society and ask questions like, do they mean any good for Jamaica? They have secured a lot of good for Jamaica by virtue of the kinds of sort of professional ethos that we're experiencing now from the JCF. Indicom and the accountability mechanisms have been fought for long and hard by groups like JCF. Not
JFJ.
JFJ, and we ought to be grateful to them for that as well.
Yeah,
I have written articles in the past praising JFJ. I am not against human rights people when they're doing their job properly and being responsible and making the proper statements and seem to be defending innocent citizens. I support that 100%. But they had lost the plot about 10 years ago. Totally went off track. It started when they started wanting to put these illegal things in school about the buggery law and all that. They lost track of keeping innocent Jamaicans fighting justice for them. Why are they not calling for people like Yatanya Francis? That's one I've never forgotten, that Yatanya Francis. The poor mother, she's being burnt, thinking he's a coward, something is her daughter being burnt after being raped. And has Jamaica for Justice ever said we're going to try to find who did that? No.
Yeah.
You don't hear them talking about that is where they should be doing it. Trying to get justice for those who have no other way to get justice. That is how they started. That is how Jamaica for Justice started out, that people supported them. But Indicom has now come to keep the police under control. That's their job. Jamaican Justice for Justice is to get justice for those who don't have access to justice, not to come with crackpot statements about rehabilitation for a man that cut 5 throats,